Search for missing man hits the internet. Pretty interesting to see that as a headline for an article in a newspaper, because nowadays that happens within hours, sometimes minutes, of someone realizing my loved one is missing. But this is an article from back in 2007 when things were quite a bit different. And what it's talking about is a new web page and even a MySpace page that's being dedicated to this case. The wife of missing person John Shadden, Stephanie Shadden, is stating, "Please take the time to pass it along to your friends about John Shadden missing since June 9th, 2007. We, as a family, have tried many ways of getting it out nationwide, but it always seems to fail. Thanks for looking. Miss you, John." That is one of a handful of articles I can find about the disappearance of John, and honestly, there haven't been any recent news stories on this in easily the last decade. But nowadays, we can get it out to a nationwide audience fairly quickly. Grief can severely impact a family, and in the disappearance of John Shadden, that definitely seems to be the case. We're going to see that when he originally went missing, his wife Stephanie was working to raise exposure, just like noted in that article, but soon after would have to turn her focus to taking care of their children. Now, John's side of the family have been wondering what happened to their loved one for many years, and they decided that it was finally time to reach out and ask for help. Today, we're going to go over all the reported facts that I can find, and I'm going to incorporate some of the additional information told to me in several interviews I've had with different members of John's family. We're hoping that bringing this information to a new audience might give this family a chance at finding the answers that they've been looking for, coming up on 15 years now. It's time to turn on the searchlight for John Shadden. Welcome back to Brainscratch Searchlight. I'm John Lorden. Thank you so much for caring about these cases like I do, and I'm hoping that after watching this video, you're going to take that next step and share it with any friends, acquaintances, anyone that you know in the state of Texas. We need to re-raise awareness to a case that has fallen out of the vision of news coverage many, many years ago. So we got a bit of a challenge. I'm going to need your help. A very big thank you to the man that brought this case to me, Jason Watts. You might have heard me talk about Jason before. He is the big advocate on the Brandon Lawson case. I'm looking forward to having him on the channel as soon as we hear something definitive on what's going on in that case. You might remember a few weeks ago, we talked about the discovery of clothing that they do believe is Brandon's and some human remains. We're waiting for DNA confirmation on that. Jason caught wind of this case, another person missing from Coke County. Now, I did look into, there's not a lot of talk about this online. Where I do see John's name come up is kind of in forums around the discussion with Brandon, and it's kind of pointing to the fact that maybe law enforcement isn't so great in that area. Jason and myself just want to be very clear. The sheriff in charge of John's investigation was a completely different sheriff from the one that handled Brandon's investigation. So just to kind of clear that right up off the bat. Let's go ahead and get into some of the details. The Shaddens were married on August 9th, 2003. Now, John had one child from a previous relationship, and his new wife, Stephanie, had a child from a previous relationship as well. They would get together, and they would have 2 additional children together. However, less than 4 years into their marriage, John and Stephanie were having some challenges. Now, John's family is very open with me about the fact that John was likely struggling with alcohol addiction, as his parents did. And despite the news sources that we're going to see as we go through everything today, John's family says that the trailer he was at when he went missing, which was kind of a vacation trailer that he and his wife had purchased from her father, that was actually where he was staying because he had been, I don't know if he was kicked out of the house or decided to leave the home. Something had happened at the home, and John went to stay at this family vacation trailer. The news sources are making it sound different, like he was kind of just there for the weekend. So I just want to point that out. This is information that's coming from the family, and I'm always going to do my best to be sure to let you guys know if we're leaning on a news source. You'll see it on the screen, and we'll be reading right off of it. If we're not, I'm going to try to remind you that this is information that's also coming from John's family. Now, John Shadden loved fishing and golfing. As a matter of fact, he played in a golf tournament only a day before he would go missing. He played in it with his boss. We're going to see a little bit of information about that in the news segments. Let's start by getting the basics of the case over at the NamUs profile for John Paul Shadden, a missing white Caucasian male. Date of last contact, June 9th, 2007. That's actually a Saturday. Missing from Robert Lee, Texas at the age of 36. Currently, he would be 50 years old. So, of course, all these photos that we're looking at, the ones that you're seeing scroll down below me, we've got to add almost 15 years to what he might look like for those photos. And I'm not finding any age progressions or anything like that, or I would have brought them up in some of the photos down below. Let's see, no nicknames. He stands somewhere between 5'8" and 5'11", according to NamUs. Let me just check one of the other profiles. Texas EquiSearch also has a profile for him. They're saying 5'8" as well. Weighs between 165 to 185 pounds. We know he's missing from Coke County. For the circumstances of disappearance, we don't have a whole lot. Went missing on the 9th of June, 2007, around 3 p.m. from Lake Spence. How did they get that 3 p.m. time frame? Effectively, he went to a convenience store. His family tells me he bought some beer and I think some chewing tobacco at the convenience store. They have security camera footage of him making that purchase. I did see mention in one of the articles about someone else potentially seeing him, but it had no details about it at all. And I don't know if that might have been on the same trip to the convenience store, or maybe that was just echoing what they saw happen in the convenience store, where we know that he was interacting with someone to make the purchase. Physical description, hair color brown. He wears his hair cut short. He has hazel eyes. For scars or marks, they say he has a scar on his right knee. I asked his family what that was about. They said it was from a knee surgery, so it would be a surgery type scar on his right knee. Also a tattoo on his right shoulder. I asked them what the tattoo was. They said it was Calvin from the Calvin and Hobbes comics. Clothing and accessories, jewelry. He may be wearing a gold rope chain necklace. We're going to find as we go into the details that a lot of his personal items are actually found in the trailer. I would assume that obviously the gold rope chain necklace was not found, so they're thinking that that could be with him. No transportation is entered here. His vehicle effectively left at the trailer as well. I believe his keys for the vehicle also found in the trailer. But let's go ahead and learn where this is happening. Robert Lee, Texas. Robert Lee is a city in and the county seat of Coke County, Texas, United States. The population was 1,049 at the 2010 census. The town of Robert Lee is located on the Colorado River. Just upstream from the town is E.B. Spence Reservoir, managed by the Colorado River Municipal Water District. And that reservoir is a very important factor in this search as well. If we take a look at a map here, significant water source. Basically, you have the Colorado River coming down here, kind of from the northwest, and then just coming into this huge reserve, and then continuing out from there. Robert Lee Airport is right here. And actually, if we turn on the satellite view, his family tells me that the trailer that he was at is in this cluster of trailers here. It's weird because Google's actually marking this as where Robert Lee Airport is. And from what I can see, this is a fairly small airport. We'll kind of look into more details on that as well. But obviously, when you have a body of water like this close to a missing persons case like this, it becomes a very big issue. And we have some other information that kind of pulls investigators in that direction. But let's go ahead and head over to the Charlie Project. A couple of photos that we have here of John. He wears braces on his upper teeth. Really curious that they didn't note that over at the NamUs profile. I did verify that with his family, and yes, he did. I can't really see them in any of these photos, but his family was clear, yes, he did actually have braces on his upper teeth when he went missing. Shadden was last seen June 9th near his vacation trailer home by the E.V. Spence Reservoir. He has never been heard from again. He was reported missing June 12th after he didn't return to his family in Midland, Texas, and he missed work. Shadden left behind a wife and 4 children, ranging from 7 months to 16 years old. Man. He was employed as an instrumentation and electric technician for TEPCO crude pipeline at the time of his disappearance. A couple things to break down here. Let's just take a look at TEPCO. That stands for Texas Eastern Product Pipeline. It was originally developed by the U.S. government in World War II as 2 pipelines that were moving crude and product from the Gulf Coast to the upper Midwest and North Coast. Sounds like he was probably doing pretty well in his job, having a role like that. I believe he might have moved to this area to Robert Lee. I think it was for that job as well. He was originally from a different part of Texas. But another thing I just wanted to check out real quick is that airport. Is it active? Because from the satellite view, when I go zooming in on the actual runway, it looks kind of beat up a little bit, or maybe just a touch overgrown. I don't know if that's some kind of artifacting from the satellite view, but I don't think so. And I was just wondering, is this really an active airport? According to information over at airportdata.com, it is. Robert Lee Airport, currently operational as of the airport status here. I don't know what types of flights would be going in there. I don't know if that's an airport just for kind of, small personal aircraft, if it's just a destination that people go to go hang out by the lake for a little while, or even just, take in the view of the lake as they're going and landing there, turning around, flying somewhere else. I have no idea. So the possibility that he might have left using a plane or using the airport in some way is kind of tough for me to understand. I just don't know the feasibility of it. Is it something where he could have called someone he knew and kind of gotten a ride? They flew in, he got in the plane, they left together. All of a sudden he's off in Mexico. I really don't know. I don't know how strong of a possibility that is. Let's get into the news articles over at newswest9.com. The search continues for John Shadden. This posted on June 30th, 2007. Law enforcement groups from several counties have been searching the reservoir where 36-year-old John Shadden was last seen. The Texas Rangers have also stepped in to help. So far, they've only found Shadden's wallet and cell phone. Now, the way this is written, you might assume, wow, they found his wallet and cell phone at the reservoir or possibly in the water. From what his family is telling me, that's not true. The wallet, his cell phone, that was found in the trailer. And like I said, I think his truck keys were in there. And according to one of the articles I saw, his wedding ring also in there. It might be a little bit of a sign of, some of the tensions that were going on between him and his wife. Other people might look at that as a sign that, I don't know, that he was thinking about just leaving it all behind. But there's a different consideration here that I found. I had to actually crack into old newspaper articles on this case just because of the age of it. There's a reason why they went looking at the reservoir. Various law enforcement organizations searched for John Shadden on June 17th and June 23rd. A search dog traced his scent to the edge of the reservoir on June 13th. So just taking a look back at this map, the thing, here we go. The thing I'm not 100% sure of is when you have a dog track a scent like that, is it tracking like the strongest? Is it the most recent? Is it possible that when he's staying out there every morning, he grabs a cup of coffee and he goes and walks towards the water to drink it and hangs out there, turns around, goes back? I don't know. But very clear, according to that article, they did have a dog that tracked his scent to some part of the reservoir. It's not very clear on what part. One of the challenges in this case, according to what his family tells me, is police didn't really investigate it as a matter of foul play. Quite honestly, I'm not seeing a lot of signs, even in the reported information, that this is a foul play situation. And because of that, we're talking no forensics being performed on his work truck. Effectively, I think his company picked that up the next day and just rolled it right back into the business. No forensics performed really at the trailer. Of course, we do know there's a search because they find the items. But that's about it. So no real forensic information in terms of foul play around this. As a matter of fact, the family says that while they were going out there performing in search efforts, that they knew that other people were staying in the trailer during those search efforts. So even trying to do forensics after the fact, if they did find some kind of foul play conditions, which I don't think they did, would have been probably pretty difficult. In an article in the San Angelo Times from September 7th of 2007, we hear a very heartbreaking consideration about the children. Not knowing what to tell their 4 young children makes not knowing harder, said his wife Stephanie, a respiratory therapist. It's very difficult to tell them. I don't know where their father is, she said. They think since I'm a parent, I'm supposed to know. Really, really tough. Wife says missing husband tried to cheer himself up before disappearing. His family has some thoughts on this article, but let's go through the article first. Looking to lift his spirits by playing golf with coworkers at Big Spring Country Club. John Shadden's wife said Wednesday he had probably been drinking alcohol before his mid-June disappearance. Considering that we see he's buying beer, and of course, I mentioned his family has been talking about the fact it does seem like he was struggling with an alcohol addiction. I'm thinking she's probably correct. The 36-year-old had been depressed about his father George's recent death, but seemed in good spirits the last time she saw him, his wife said. We had a good conversation before he left on Thursday, June 8th. Is what this article is quoting her as saying. According to Google, June 8th was actually Friday. We know that he's golfing on Friday with his boss, so it kind of makes sense that he probably left on Thursday. I think it was probably June 7th. But back to Stephanie's quote, my dad, Keith Maddox, had shattered his pelvis in Ruidoso, and John wanted to know how he was. He came by to get his stuff and said his work was real hectic. He was a good golfer and enjoyed it very much. 3 of her husband's TEPCO colleagues, Mike St. John, I believe that's his boss, Charlie Evans, and Steve Compton had been to the lake looking for him. He was a good employee, and I know it's a big loss for them. He was my best friend. We depended on each other because he worked days and I worked nights, Stephanie said. Sheriff Rick Stiles and Deputy Randall Jacks are looking into the possibility that the man did not drown and is missing for a different reason. The younger children still think their father is away working, their mother said. A Texas EquiSearch mounted search and rescue team official in Dickinson has promised a diligent effort when it sends an expert team in about 2 weeks. We have side scan sonar that can fairly easily detect an image and will send divers if necessary, said Office Administrator Cheryl Lawless. We won't stop until we find him. When we can come to the family and put their baby back in their arms, whether dead or alive, that's our satisfaction. I can't talk enough about Texas EquiSearch. We talk about them on the channel all the time. They're some of the best when it comes to searching, all the right tools, and honestly, just one of the organizations that has the biggest hearts in this missing person space. So to just kind of break this stuff down a little bit, John's family is telling me that they think that this article is leaning a little hard into him dealing with some form of depression. Yes, his father did pass away. It actually happened a few months before his disappearance, according to them. And they were speaking to him through this and said that, yeah, he wasn't happy about it, obviously, but it's not that it was something that was, at least with their contact with him, it wasn't something that was coming up as being this huge problem or tough thing for him to be dealing with. Now you might wonder, we're talking, what do you tell your siblings versus what do you tell your wife? We've also got this consideration. I don't know what's going on in terms of their relationship. So what's their communication like at this particular time? I don't know. We got a lot of things here, and I'm just trying to be very open and upfront with you guys about the different things that could be at play in terms of understanding around this. The people that I'm talking to are saying, yes, he was certainly sad his father passed away, but it wasn't to the point where he was in some type of, deep depression over it. I'm curious about what the sheriff and deputy are stating here, looking into the possibility that the man did not drown and is missing for a different reason. Kind of just an interesting comment coming off the heels of having the dog, actually traces scent to the water. Of course, we know that law enforcement does a couple searches before EquiSearch gets out there. They're not finding anything in the water to really kind of firm up that that's where he went. Like I mentioned, the personal items they found were actually back in the trailer. So, kind of curious to see where that goes. We've got another article that might give us a little more insight into that. Effectively, this article is the call for help. Volunteers wanted Saturday, September 8th. Volunteers are needed to assist Texas EquiSearch mounted search and recovery team to search by horseback or by volunteering food for search team members. The search will begin at 8 a.m. Saturday, September 8th, and at the store at Wildcat Marina at Lake Spence near Robert Lee. I think they got a little typo in there. The store at Wildcat Marina, I'm not positive, but if it's that close to where he was last seen, there's a chance that that actually might be the store that he was filmed at. So just trying to figure out where it is. Wildcat Marina doesn't come up as its own listing here, but this is Wildcat Marina Road. So obviously if we follow the road, that's the road that leads to the trailer park. So the store, I would bet the store he's last seen at, probably in this area, if there's a store there, which it sounds like from that article. And I would think that the Wildcat Marina Road is going to lead us to what they consider the marina, which, yeah, this could be, I don't know if that's a boat launch, but that's pretty interesting there. It's a big wide path leading right into the water. Looks like maybe another one up here. So I would assume that this is the area that they're looking at and probably lines up with, if he's staying at a trailer in this area, probably lines up with where the dog had led them to. Probably the water somewhere on this kind of inner ridge here. Bit of a scary consideration we hear about in this article, printed September 6th, 2007 in the Odessa American. Cindy Wisdom, Texas EquiSearch case manager, says that this search could be different than others that EquiSearch has conducted. Wisdom said, there are indications Shadden had a gun on him, leading to the possibility of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. There are also indications of a drowning, Wisdom said, since there were reports of Shadden drinking heavily. Unfortunately, no two cases are ever the same. We don't know if he's on land or in the water. So definitely some concerning things there. This is the only place where I've seen mention of a gun. When I asked his family if he would carry a weapon, one sibling didn't think so, but the other was pretty certain that he actually had a permit to carry. They had no information about any weapon being found to be missing. So I'm just curious because, we're hearing that he was probably licensed to carry. Here they're saying that there are indications he had a gun on him. I don't know. Maybe they heard that same information that he had a license to carry. I'm not finding any other articles or anything that's pointing to a particular, hey, no, there is, a 9mm that he was known to keep in his vehicle and it was missing from his vehicle. Or there was a gun that was always at the trailer because someone liked to go hunting or something like that. That weapon is missing. I'm not seeing anything quite that solid. But here we're hearing from an EquiSearch member, it's a concern of theirs because they do have indications that he could have had a weapon on him. This article also touches on the fact that some financial benefits have been denied the family because of the lack of a body. Some of those financial issues can be really tough in cases like this, but they do wind up finally declaring John legally dead in 2014. Back to Cindy Wisdom, she says that she's confident of locating a body. If we're in the right area, we'll find him, she said. We'll do everything we can. How did that play out? We're going to jump over to, I know this isn't a source we usually lean on. This is a reprint of an article from the Midland Reporter Telegram, but it's contained in a post over at Tapatalk. So this is an article from September 9th, 2007. A day-long search of the area around E.B. Spence Reservoir and surrounding area on Saturday turned up no sign of missing Midlander John Shadden. A little more than 100 volunteers came out to search a 2 to 5 mile area around the lake. 10 people from Texas EquiSearch Mounted Search and Rescue Team of Dickinson brought side-scan sonar, horses, and all-terrain vehicles to look for Shadden, who has been missing since June 9th. We covered about 1 mile and found absolutely nothing, said Cindy Wisdom. There's a lot of cactus, it's hard hiking, and hard searching. Also scanned was 2 miles in the lake, but there were no hits. About 20 people stayed on location overnight. Basically, they were going to try to run a little bit more of a search the following day. It looked like they were going to try to get at least another 4 hours in. Food and water were provided by the Red Cross, the Wink community, and Alamo Heights Baptist Church, where the Shaddens are members. Wisdom expressed her thanks to the people of Midland for turning out in such numbers, and how great that we have these community members pulling together like this, Red Cross stepping up, the Alamo Heights Baptist Church, the Wink community. Thank you guys so much. That's just, it really does take a community in these cases. It was a great response from there. We're very, very pleased. You can be proud of your community, Wisdom said. Stephanie Shadden said she was not holding up well. I've been crying a lot. When you see people do this for you, sweat and just about pass out because they're looking for something, that means something to you. A few days later in the San Angelo Standard Times, on September 12th, another article posted here. Rick Smith, basically, the writer Rick Smith was keeping in touch with Stephanie, and there was kind of these little segments that he was doing about this case over and over coming up in the paper. And it looks like those search efforts were a point where Stephanie was ready to say, okay, I've got to focus on my family. We have a quote here. Although the case officially remains open, Stephanie said she finally has accepted the idea that her husband is gone. For me, the search is over, she said. For some reason, he didn't want to be found. It is a really tough consideration in this case because we're not seeing signs of any element of foul play that's going on here. It doesn't seem like he was forcibly removed from his trailer or something like that. And that kind of leads you down to one of a few different conclusions. Of course, we have to consider the possibility of self-harm. And there's this other thought that maybe John could have left his life behind. And I think her comment really rings true for that. If it is one of those two conditions that we're looking at, there's a possibility he just didn't want to be found. Another factor that comes up with cases in this area, we heard about it in the Brandon Lawson case. I've heard about it a few times in terms of the Jason Landry disappearance, is sinkholes and wells. This is Texas. So a lot of possibilities. It sounds like some of the ground can be pretty rough in this area. As we were looking into Brandon's case, we heard about it with Coke County in several other places as well. So possibility of an accident or something like that is still a factor in my mind. And in speaking to the family, I've kind of been asking about that. It seems like some of them might be gearing up to start some new search efforts around all this. Of course, I'll keep you guys updated here on the channel with anything that we can do to help on that front. Another interesting piece of information comes out the following month in October of 2007 in this article, once again from the San Angelo Standard Times. The family hired a private detective to examine the contents of the hard drive from the family's computer. And we have a quote here from Stephanie's aunt, Patsy. She says, some family members speculate that John is still alive. She said John Shadden had used the computer for 6 hours before his disappearance. She speculated that retracing his computer trail might provide clues. His family wants to know what happened to him, she said. There are so many unanswered questions, it's real frustrating. John still hasn't been found. We just want to know where he is. So, nowadays, that's a fairly common search. I think law enforcement pretty familiar with that aspect. If someone goes missing and they were last known to be on any electronic device, take a look at that electronic device, look at the internet search history, see what they were looking up. That can certainly give you some idea in terms of things that they're considering or things that might be going through their mind. there's no follow-up on this angle that I can find that came out publicly or that is still alive on the internet for me to grab it between, what I can find that's still active online and archives like this one. But seems like a pretty interesting consideration. If he was at that computer for 6 hours, what exactly was he looking up? And it could be that the history looks normal, and that could give you insight into his mindset as well. Was he looking up golf tips? We know that he had that trip coming up. Was there other things going on? Was he looking up, alcohol, substance abuse counseling? There's all kinds of different directions that type of information can lead you. And of course, the obvious ones, especially for the considerations that we're talking about here, was he looking up places to go in Mexico? Was he looking up how to not be found in a source of water? I don't know. But unfortunately, we don't have any further detail on what that search brought up. As we get into early 2008, we hit one of the last articles that I can find about this case, posted January 12th, 2008. Local missing man's kin raise website. Stephanie Shadden says she hopes that spreading the message about her missing husband over the internet will help solve the mystery of his disappearance. She's created one page at johnshaddenmissing.com and another on MySpace. We'll continue with this article, but just to give you guys a look, johnshaddenmissing.com isn't active anymore, but I was able to find an archive of it over at the Wayback Machine. So this is what it looks like. Effectively, it's some of the pictures we've seen from the articles before, and it's really the missing persons poster that's posted here. As a matter of fact, that poster pretty much still up over at Texas EquiSearch. Looks like all the exact same information that is hosted on both of those. Now, the MySpace page is active, is still there, but MySpace nowadays is kind of just a broken shell of what used to be there. There's no information. I can't tell you what was here. I would bet it was probably the same thing, probably had a copy of the, it might have even been integrated to the actual website. Maybe that's why it's showing up as empty now. But I would bet that it was essentially the missing persons poster that was here. The one thing I could tell from here is looking at some of the connections. The connections of this account are connecting to other people for missing persons cases. So it looks like at the time, Stephanie was trying to associate with other people that were having similar experiences using this MySpace profile. But that's really all that I could tell from it. Back to the article. Several searches of the lake and the surrounding area have failed to turn up clues about what happened to him. It's kind of troubling as well. I mean, you guys that have been here with the channel for a long time know that in many of these cases, when we're talking about an area that could be seen as a recreational area, it looks like you've got a couple boat launches there. You've got, an airstrip for probably recreational aircraft to come in. In many of these cases, there is someone that is just out there to have fun that comes across some piece, maybe a piece of clothing. Sometimes they do come across human remains, and it's coming up on 15 years, and we have not had that occurrence. No shoes. I mean, look at the Salish shoe mystery that we looked into on Brainscratch. I think it was years ago at this point. There's certain things that are just, even if there is a body in water, there is usually some indication that makes its way to the surface in some way. We're not seeing that in this case. It is kind of a strange consideration, and maybe it does lean, people that are looking into this case to thinking about that other possibility that he left this area for some reason. He was known, according to his family, to save money from a very young age. Like he would just squirrel everything away that he could. He was also known to occasionally take a flight to Mexico. And as we saw on the map, his trailer literally steps away from a runway for an active airport. So there is a possibility that he did leave. Of course, different members of the family have different feelings of how strong of a possibility that really is. Stephanie Shadden says she doesn't know if she'll ever find out what happened to her husband. I hope so, but it's hard to tell at this point, she said. She said no more searches of the area are planned. She said part of the reason for posting information on the internet is in case that her husband is still alive and living somewhere else. And if that is the case, if this video happens to land in front of those eyes, please, John, get a message back to your family. Even if you can't come back to it, get some message back to them, please. Let them know that that's what happened. Because there's people stuck because they don't know. And they're stuck in terms of how do you process this? A whole family. It's been a very hard process to think he would walk away from his children, she said. They deserve answers about their father, and I'll do the best I can to find them. What would she say to her husband if he was still living? I would tell him everything's okay, she said. I would tell him to come home. He will always have his children. The most recent mention I can find about John Shadden is here at gosanangelo.com from July 12th, 2018. It's actually an article about the Brandon Lawson case. And while I mentioned that there was a different sheriff in charge of each of these investigations, there's one person that kind of crosses over between the investigations. Every few months, Coke County's 6-person sheriff's office receives a call from someone seeking information about Brandon Lawson. Every few months, they tell someone the case is dead. We don't have any leads, Chief Deputy Brandon Neal explains. We have nothing. You might remember Chief Neal is the first person to have arrived on the scene in Brandon's disappearance. Some people think Lawson, because of an outstanding warrant or his rocky relationship with Lofton, his common-law wife, Ledessa, purposely disappeared and is living a new life undetected. It's a theory that we've obviously talked about in this case as well, but it seems that Deputy Neal actually subscribes to it quite a bit. Neal reported that his conclusion is that Lawson is possibly no longer in Coke County. Now, remember, this is obviously an article from before the discovery of Brandon's clothing. It was determined that Lawson was not on the ground due to the fact that there was a lot of exposed bare ground, even under the short mesquite and cedar bushes. His report concluded with his opinion that Brandon Lawson is not in Coke County, lost, or hiding. His belief, he reported, is that after he and Kyle left the pickup, Lawson walked back to the roadway and was able to get a ride from a passing motorist. Another man, John Shadden, disappeared from Coke County in 2007 and has never been seen again. Neal said his disappearance was intentional too, a sentiment shared by some of Shadden's acquaintances. It's always tough to talk about this aspect, but of course, with some of the signs that we're seeing in the coverage, I had to bring this up at some point. The only potential method of self-harm that's been discussed with the family, at least the members that I spoke to, is him potentially walking into the lake. From what I can see, and I asked them, there doesn't seem to be any bridges close to the area where he went missing. And I did just do a little bit of research. According to a study done in 2002 based on data compiled about drowning, specifically in Texas, the victims are usually sober white males over the age of 40, and it does note that some will use weights. We're talking specifically about instances of self-harm, not just general drownings. We know that side sonar scanning was done by Texas EquiSearch. We know reportedly it's for a couple miles, but honestly, I don't know how much of a search that is of Lake Spence. It looks like a fairly large area, so understanding how thoroughly that scan was a little bit tricky from where I'm sitting. And unfortunately, that is it. That is it for the coverage. This case then goes dormant from news coverage for about 10 years. I'm not even sure how it came into contact with Jason, but Jason eventually gets in contact with me. I get in contact with these family members. Guys, we spoke about it for months before deciding to go about this. We're just trying to figure out how to help them, what's the best approach. And in them speaking with each other, there was really one big thing that they couldn't get over. And that was the feeling of just not trying, just having an opportunity like this. You know, Jason Watts is part of the team that found Brandon Lawson. He got out there and did it. Jason tells me there's a good chance he's going to be doing some searches of his own in this case as well. All of a sudden, he's connected with someone that can get this on YouTube and in front of anyone that goes searching for this name. Anyone that searches for John Shadden on YouTube, this video is going to pop up. And I think it was those considerations that really just the family felt like they had to at least try. And that's kind of where we were all at with it. It was a really hard decision. It's been a very difficult episode to kind of pull together because I'm very concerned. It's clear to me, and I understand that Stephanie had to make a choice and decide what she was going to focus on. When I talk to families that are dealing with having missing loved ones, I'm constantly having to remind them about, hey, don't forget about your family, because this can eat you up. It can take all of your time, all of your attention, all of your focus, all of your resources, and you have other family members that need you there. I've had this conversation even with Mary Chris from the Maya Miliete case, someone that's working extremely hard doing those searches over and over out in the public all the time. Just little reminders about, hey, don't forget about, that family that you have at home. Because that's another, it's weird because going through a loss like this, everyone feels like they have a hole, I think, that they're trying to fill, but all of a sudden your kids could be feeling that hole because your focus is away. You're somewhere else. Even if you are physically at home, you're just being so consumed by what's going on. So I understand. I totally understand the approach that Stephanie had to take with this. And I think it was, it's like when they tell you when you're on an airplane about how you have to put the mask on yourself before you put it on your children. Effectively, you have to make sure that you're going to be able to keep helping people into the future. And I think that's why, when we get after the Texas EquiSearch search efforts, we have Stephanie just be very clear about I think that's all I could do. I think that's enough. And I think I need to focus on the kids. But there's other family members and they didn't want to feel like they didn't try. And that's why I'm here today. That's why this camera is on. I also want to honor all the family members here. Stephanie was very clear about what it meant to get the community out there, about what it meant to have Texas EquiSearch out there. We make donations to Texas EquiSearch regularly here on the channel. We're in a new year and we haven't made a donation to them yet. And I think this is the perfect opportunity to do that. So on behalf of myself and my amazing supporters, thank you to all of my wonderful patrons, everyone that goes to lordandarts.com, kicks in through PayPal, buys merchandise, buys us a coffee. Thank you. All those things help us do something like we're doing today, which is making a donation to Texas EquiSearch. I'm going to bring up the page. Just as soon as I'm done filming here today, I'm going to hit that donate button and we're going to get that done. And on top of that, I'm going to have a link in the description box down below. If you want to add some more to this wonderful organization, seriously, guys, one of my top 5 organizations for missing persons cases, easy. Please join me. Add to that donation by making your own using that link down below. And before I end today's video, I just want to ask one more time, this case is coming from a point of just having no coverage for a decade. I need help, guys. I need your help with this one. Please think of any friends you have in Texas, acquaintances. Just get this information out to them. We need to re-raise exposure. We got to give this family a chance. If John is out there, we need a chance for this video to land in front of his eyes. If he's not out there, what if there's someone that did find something at Lake Spence, but they don't know about this case because it hasn't been reported on in over a decade? What if someone saw a pair of shoes out there that just didn't mean anything to them? There could be little pieces of information out there that just haven't been reassociated properly with the case. Pieces of information that might bring answers for these families. So please help me. I could really use it. Take care, everyone. I really appreciate each and every one of you that spends this time with us on these episodes and takes that extra step to help us like I'm asking for today. Have a wonderful weekend. Take care. Please join us again on Monday with a brand new episode of Case Cracked right here on the Lord and Arts channel.